Hello, we meet again. Today we have part 2 of a 4-part series from Surviving Infidelity. It's a continuation of the first part called, My Wife Cheated on Me During Quarantine. This one is called, I Had a Really Tough Day Monday. As always, spelling and grammar mistakes courtesy of Reddit. Lol. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. Thank you. Part 2 of 4, I Had a Really Tough Day Monday. I had a really tough day on Monday. For my own therapy, I'm going to be completely vulnerable as I open up myself to the world. For the most part, and in any other context, none of these things should have and would have bothered me, but given recent events, I just couldn't breathe. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't remove images from my head. I was emotional and I was scared. It was really important for me to distance myself and my finances from my soon-to-be ex-wife. She always gave me the sense that I couldn't handle finances on my own, because she directly told me so, and told me that I should leave my paychecks in her account until we officially separated. I couldn't do it. I needed to separate everything ASAP. I can handle my finances as I'm an adult and a high-functioning business professional. Unfortunately, I am human, and I do make mistakes, and given what's going on, I was more likely to make mistakes. I provided the wrong account number for my direct deposits. They require what is called a MICR number, which is essentially a digital barcode. I provided my actual account number, which rejected all of my money. I'm now waiting on paper checks and my house payment is late. It's early Monday. I had a doctor's appointment for an unrelated reason to depression, but I felt I should write depression down as a secondary reason for being at my appointment. My doctor is amazing. She listened to me. She was compassionate and empathetic. She helped me, but she was concerned that I had these images flashing in my mind of self-harm. I don't know where these images came from or why they were all of a sudden appearing now. I don't think there was any will or desire behind these images, just suggestions placed in my mind's eye every time I closed my eyes or blinked. I would never hurt myself. Life is never so bad for me to take my own life or hurt myself or those that I care for around me. I firmly believe that, but the images scared me. They began as images of me driving my car off a local dam because I had been driving. I decided to visit an old Little League baseball field I grew up on. I parked in the parking lot trying to figure out why I never got paid. Every direct deposit I had coming in was rejected. There were 3 of them. I drove to my bank at 9 a.m., but due to COVID, they didn't open until 10 a.m. I had music playing, and every time I closed my eyes, the images became more real. They shifted from driving my car off the damn road to grabbing razor blades from my drawer at home. The phrase, up the tracks, not across the tracks, was playing in my head in the style of a 1950s showroom melody. I had already figured out what was wrong with my account, so I had no reason to go in the bank, but I couldn't go home. I couldn't drive. Both images scared me enough that I worried about both, so I called my therapist's office to ask for someone I could speak with. God bless the young girl who answered the phone, because she was not prepared to deal with what she was about to get into. I explained my desperation of needing to talk to someone. She opened my chart and informed me that my therapist is on vacation for the next week. I again emphasized the importance of talking to someone. She suggested that she could cancel all of my appointments with my therapist and assign me a new one. No, that's not going to work. I just need to talk. She wasn't sure what to do. She fumbled around for a minute trying to figure something out. There was a moment of awkward silence and click, she hung up on me. At the moment it felt like she had given up on me, when in actuality she probably just screwed up. I called back and got a different girl. She, too, had no solution for me. I did ask to speak to a manager, but I'm fairly certain they're all working from home now, and getting a manager on the phone right away wasn't feasible. She promised to have a manager call me. I told her about my images, and she was sincerely concerned. But she couldn't help me. I sat in the parking lot a little while longer, scared of what to do next. I received a call from my therapist's office after a few minutes, and the girl Morgan knew just what to do. She talked to me. She wants a therapist, but she cared. She took action. She asked if I was home, and I said no, but she had already called the police to do a wellness check on me. I told her I was heading home, that I needed to get home by 11 to return my rental with my wife. Sidebar. I am driving a rental car. After finding out about my wife's cheating, I was asked by my family to come home to Vegas so they could care for me. They suggested I bring my daughter. My wife suggested that I bring my 2 boys as well. A day before I was leaving, my car broke down. I had 2 bad engine mounts, a bad water pump, a broken fuse box, and bad spark plugs. I still really needed to go to Vegas, so I called my insurance, USAA, since I'm a veteran. The guy who was also a Marine was very helpful and told me that my insurance would cover the rental for mechanical reasons. After I got to Vegas, I was told that they wouldn't cover the rental, but I had already paid $622 $200 deposit. End sidebar. The girl was so sweet and listened to me that I started to cry while driving. In certain cases where I was explaining my story, I would start to sob. She stayed on the phone the whole time. I told her I was home. I told her I walked into the house. I was on speakerphone and my wife could hear parts of the conversation. I hung up after thanking her and placed my head in my hand and gently sobbed. My wife isn't a monster. What she did to me was horrific and she knows it, but she's not a monster. She had empathy, compassion, and love for me. She just doesn't know how to show it. She always feels robotic, but that's due to her own childhood and life struggles. She could tell I was not okay and walked over to me. She asked if I wanted to hold her. I nodded my head yes in my hands and refused to make eye contact. I didn't want her to actually see the tears. I buried my head into her chest, gripped tight around her back, and bawled. She rubbed my back and told me to breathe. I cried harder. I appreciate her willingness to console me, but it felt robotic. It didn't fill the void in my chest where my heart used to be. It wasn't helping. Then there was a loud knock on the door. She asked what that was, and I said it was the police. She was confused. She asked why they were there, and I said they were there for me. She was worried. She went to answer the door and they explained in a little more detail why they were there. The two officers came into my bedroom. They were incredible. The female officer that was doing most of the talking instantly related to my daughter in my story. Her father committed suicide in prison. She talked about the void she has in her heart because of it. The male officer saw my USMC leg tattoo. He was a Marine. He started talking to me like a Marine. It helped. But they were dispatched to someone else and the man shook my hand and the woman hugged me. They cared and it felt good. But they were gone, and my robotic wife sat down at her computer to go back to work as if nothing happened. I couldn't be there anymore. I said that over and over quietly to myself but loud enough for my wife to hear it. I can't be here. I can't be here. I got in my car and my wife didn't chase after me. I was crushed. I got down the street and she called and I couldn't answer. She texted, "If you don't answer, I'm calling the cops to come find you." I didn't respond. She called again 2 more times and I couldn't answer. She continued to text me without a response. "Okay, I'm calling him 12:18 p.m. She called me again at 12:29 p.m. "They are going to call you 12:32 p.m. The female officer that I spoke to before called me 6 times between 12:32 and 12:36. I couldn't answer. She even texted me. I was scared of these images in my head and I did want to be somewhere safe. I drove to the police station and parked in the parking lot. I threw on some sad music and opened up Facebook and scrolled through 7 years of love and our family growth. I watched as my family turned from just me and my daughter into a family of 3, then into a family of 4, and finally into a family of 5. I absolutely love my family. But I couldn't answer the phone. Another officer kept calling from a blocked number. I did answer, but I wasn't very forthcoming with what was going on. I eventually hung up on him. I needed to get away. My family and I took our first family vacation up the Pacific Northwest last August into Vancouver, Canada. I got on the freeway and started to drive that way, but couldn't do it. I turned around and started to head toward another city that was meaningful for my wife and me. I couldn't do it either. While driving, I had a flash of a Catholic church in my head. I'm not religious, but I knew there would be someone I could talk to. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't a friend, who wasn't a relative. I sat in the pew of this beautiful church. I had a moment just for me. It was peaceful and relaxing. It quieted the images in my head while I sat there. I could breathe a little better. Eventually, I started to look around and no one was coming to check on me. It wasn't like you see in the movies. The wife texted me again and called. "I can't help you if you don't talk to me." I went to the administration office and asked for a priest or a confession booth or something. The nice woman said that there was only one priest today and he was out for an emergency. She said there would be 2 priests tomorrow and asked if I wanted to make an appointment. I politely said no and walked away. It was almost 2:45 p.m. and I knew my wife had an appointment for the dentist at 3 p.m. I got on the freeway and decided to head to that city I mentioned before. At this point, my family had been notified about my absence and started to call me and text, pleading for me to answer. I couldn't. I got into the slow lane because I couldn't continue to drive. Miraculously, my wife drove right by me on the freeway on the way to her appointment. I needed to be close to her, so I followed her. I parked in the parking lot of the dentist's office. I needed to see how worried she was. I needed her to feel the same level of anxiety that I felt the night I couldn't find her while she was cheating, but it didn't feel right. I couldn't sit there and stare at her car from the corner of the parking lot, so I drove back to the church. I sat in the same spot again in the pew and the priest showed up. He pulled me into a room to talk and I shared with him my story. At this point, my entire family is freaking out, but I had to talk to this priest. I told him everything. He was also very compassionate. He explained that none of this was my fault. That I don't need to think about self-harm. Please answer your phone or come talk to me. 4:24 p.m. Why are you ignoring me? 4:36 p.m. I'm getting to the end of my story with the priest and he's giving really good life advice and I look at my phone again that's sitting on my lap. The wife texted me again. We need to take the rental back. This is what you're concerned with now. The priest saw me breaking down and said he couldn't let me leave. He was mandated to call the police. We agreed he could call them. They showed up and I shared my story with the two officers. One male officer doing all of the talking was also 29 years old like the female officer earlier in the day. But this time he was able to relate to me. He was also a Marine and he had gone through almost identically the things I'm going through. I got these cops for a reason. Before they arrived, I finally called my wife and let her know that I was okay. I told her I was going away for a while and she needed to come to pick up the rental. She grabbed a mutual friend and came up. She told all of my family that I was all right. The moment I saw her in the same car as our friend, I broke down. She stepped out of the car and I could not face her, physically. I physically could not have my chest face her direction. I couldn't have her see me like this. Both our friend and my wife stood in the parking lot and the cops stopped them from walking up to me as I slid my body behind a pillar and wept. The deputy asked if it would be okay if my friend came over to me and I nodded yes. The closer she came the harder I cried. She grabbed me and I broke down. She held me up, kissed me on the cheek, and let me sob. I could feel the warmth, love, and concern from her. My friend asked if I wanted my wife to come over. I wanted my wife to come over more than anything. I've absolutely killed myself to be a better person for her and I want her in my life. I wanted to fix all of the things I've done wrong and I can't. It's over. I nodded that I wanted her to come over, but I still struggled with facing her. I felt like a toddler who refuses to face their parent when they're in trouble. The closer she got and the more she tried to stand in front of me, the more I cried and the more I turned my body away. The deputies asked if we wanted to go into a room together and they would be there with us. They were incredibly protective of me. My friend walked up to my wife and angrily told her not to talk to me and just hold me. We went into a nearby room and I grabbed her and held her and cried some more. I couldn't control this. I've never cried in my life. I'm sensitive and emotionally open, but I'm not a crier and I was embarrassed with it all. We said our goodbyes and I handed her the rental keys. The police put me in the back of their car and drove me to the hospital to speak to a crisis worker. I got some food which was surprisingly good for a hospital. The nurses were incredible. They liked my mask and asked me about it. I bought it off Amazon. They listened to parts of my story and we made fun of a drunk guy on a gurney as he belted out 2 tickets to paradise. I felt better. I had a long conversation with the crisis worker, and we agreed to create a safety plan. We identified my triggers and created responses that I could do to combat those tough moments. We agreed that I could leave since I was there voluntarily, so I've been staying with my friend since Monday night and away from my wife. I don't know why I was having such a tough day. I think it had a lot to do with everything bad happening financially and watching my wife quickly move on with her life. She's still talking to the dude she cheated with. She likes him because he's the opposite of me. She was asking our neighbors on social media for TVs and printers for parts for this new guy to use for projects. It crushed me for some reason. It made the last 7 years feel like they never mattered. I was overwhelmed with it all. I really am doing better. I got some medication to help me sleep. It's blocking out the bad images when I close my eyes at night. Because every time I close my eyes, I see my wife's naked body lying next to a naked man. I see her kiss me goodbye the night she left to cheat. I hear her tell me she loves me as she left to cheat. I see the text telling me she was going to go play pool with a girlfriend that we both knew. I see the disgust, anger, and hatred in her body when I caught her cheating. I needed to not feel her anger and hatred. I needed her to feel what I felt. Check out part 1 if you haven't already. The link is in the description below. I will post parts 3 and 4 soon. The links will appear in the description when I do. Thanks. Thank you so very much for listening. Please check out my other videos and like and subscribe.